Hello Bannerlord enthusiasts! Welcome back on this fine new day on this speck in space and time we call home. Timby here. In this video I'm going to talk about the 8 factions of Bannerlord. Several people have wanted me to do a video on this topic and I've wanted to make a video on this area anyways. It's a fascinating topic that I initially knew little about and enjoyed researching. This video should serve as being informative to people who know nothing of the Bannerlord factions, as well as may offer new bits of information to those that are the fanatics. Each faction has a brief summary of their location on the Bannerlord map, their faction color, their possible Warband ancestors, their historical counterparts, and lore when applicable. Bannerlord presents a massive new map with many new factions, all of this set 200 years before Warband on the same yet revamped fictional world map of Calradia. The factions are all unique and diverse, and you can see the connections to the descendant Warband factions. From what we've seen in the brief videos, blogs, and other information, we conclude there's a total of 8 independent factions with land on the map. These factions are the Calradic Empire, the Vlandians, Sturgians, Aserai, Khuzaits, and last but not least, the Battanians. However, I listed only 6. That is because the Calradic Empire is split into 3 sub-factions due to civil war. The setting, as prior stated, is 200 years before Warband, roughly dating as 1100 AD. With architecture, clothing, armor, and weapons all dating to their historical counterparts from 600 to 1100 AD. Quoting from an old developer blog, "The Empire's dilemma, the failure of its ruling elites to agree on how to tackle the shifting balance of power, has brought it to the edge of civil war. Different noble houses have taken sides based on their political outlook, their rivalries, or just rank opportunism. A semi-scripted set of linked quests at the beginning of the game will give the player the opportunity to learn about the various factions and have the chance to meet the key personalities, and perhaps give them a reason to choose one or the other in the coming conflict. After the introductory quest series, the game will then revert to full sandbox mode, but we're hoping that our revised and expanded NPC and quest systems mean that this sandbox can provide plenty of story." End quote. I believe this will be substantially better than the poultry story we have in Warband. I think this may be a worthy and actually enjoyable story, however long or short it may be. I personally love the Viking conquest story and hope that we may see something similar to that in Bannerlord. Starting off with the Calradic Empire, this faction is the remnants of the original Calradic Empire, which according to lore covered the entirety of Calradia. However, this empire declined as all massive empires do, and has since been supplanted by successor states, before finally splitting into 3 final Calradic namesakes. Inspiration for this empire is akin to that of the Roman or Byzantine empires, which too were supplanted by early medieval states. Thus, the Northern, Western, and Southern Calradic empires were created. The Northern Empire is pictured as pink on the world map, the Western appears as orange, and finally the Southern Empire appears as purple. When put together, own a good center chunk of Calradia. These 3 split-off empires currently appear to share the same unit types, an overall balanced mix with heavy cavalry, decent spearmen infantry, and good archers. The Calradic Empire's historical counterpart appears to be the later Western Roman or Byzantine empires, with the most likely being the ancient Byzantine Empire, especially considering the close visual similarities to the Byzantine soldiers. The Calradic Empire, according to a Bannerlord developer blog, and I quote, "With the Calradic Empire, we're taking a slightly different approach. Few events in history convey as much epic tragedy as does the collapse of a great imperial power. So we want to let the player experience some of that, and perhaps give a small sense of what it would have been like to live through, say, the decline of Rome. Imperial declines can be very disorienting, agonizing time, and societies are often less likely to pull together to face the challenges than they are to fall into recriminations over what went wrong. For example, it's natural for traditionalists to say, we are failing because we've abandoned our ancient ways, we are no longer as moral/disciplined/ruthless as we used to be. But maybe the problem is something else. Maybe it's not that you've gotten weaker, but your enemies have become stronger. Maybe the decline isn't because you changed, but because you're not changing fast enough." End quote. This sounds incredibly interesting. I do not think that the Calradic Empire will be my personal favorite to play as, but it will be truly fascinating to see a superpower in essence crumble and possibly fight to restore it. Next up, we have the Battanians, possibly the ancestors of the Rhodoks or Vagers, but may have no relation to any Warband factions at all. The Battanians are pictured as green on the world map and are skilled in exploiting their native woodlands and deadly in ambushes, be it a shower of arrows or a screaming charge out of the trees. Their archers are some of the best. Likely the Battanians' historical counterparts are the Picts, Celts, or the Britons, and will act as the Rhodoks of the world with their bowmen. They own a small plot of land on the world relative to other factions, but I imagine will have solid castles and cities, particularly due to their proximity to mountains. Due to my bias of the Rhodoks, I am heartily looking forward to playing as the Battanians when Bannerlord comes out. If ambush mechanics are ever implemented, I think it would be truly awesome to mow down an unsuspecting battalion of Calradic soldiers with piercing arrows. To the west of the Battanians, we have the Vlandians, almost undoubtedly the ancestors to the kingdom of Swadia from Warband, but may also be part of the roots of the Vigors. The Vlandians are red on the map and control nearly the entirety of the western coast of Calradia. They specialize in knights wielding lances and swords with the historical influence of the early Franks as a feudal state, specializing in heavy cavalry most likely. From this artwork picture of the Vlandians with a comparison picture of an early Frank soldier, it is quite likely for this to be so. The Vlandians appear to have the most land of any of the factions, although they share borders with 5 other factions, so they certainly will be under pressure from the other factions. It is odd though, as they specialize in cavalry, yet the land they are in is quite mountainous and forested. In fact, almost the entire map of Calradia is this way. I would have expected there to be areas of more wide open plains akin to the Swadian area in the Warband map. An interesting bit of fan lore is that both the Rhodoks and Swadians could be the descendants of the Vlandians, on the basis that the Rhodoks have powerful pikemen that could have revolted against the Vlandians during a civil war, thus causing a split for Vlandia. This is certainly not confirmed, but it would make sense, and it is interesting nonetheless. Overall, this sounds like an exciting faction to play as. I anticipate both fighting with and against them. Next up, the Sturgians. Due to their culture, concept art, tavern music, settlement names, and location on the map, we can certainly conclude that likely the Nords and possibly a few Vigors are the descendants of the Sturgians. They are positioned on the upper shores of Calradia and have relatively few settlements. A specialization of the Sturgians is in lethal axemen and powerful swordsmen in shield wall formations, surely drinking from their enemy's skulls. Their historical equivalents may likely be ancient Viking, Nordic, and or Scandinavians. They are definitely influenced by Vikings though, as in developer blog 9, Tailworld said, I quote, "For Sturgia, the Viking-style faction, for example, we chose strong, deep-sounding davul drums," end quote. This blog was over 2 years ago, so things obviously may have changed, but we can assume that they are indeed the Viking-type faction of Bannerlord. The Nords, for whatever reason, haven't been my favorite. I haven't disliked them, but they haven't been my main choice before. I suppose because they had a tough start in Warband due to the Sea Raiders and their archery units not being the best. However, when Bannerlord does come out, I will certainly be excited to try playing as the Sturgians. Heck, I'll play as any faction with how desperate we are for Bannerlord. Next to last, the Khuzaits. Finally, we have a faction that doesn't end with IA. Located on the northeastern chunk of Calradia, the Khuzaits are brown and own a small yet respectable amount of settlements. The Khuzaits are without a doubt the primary ancestors of the Calradic Empire due to their location, culture, and troops. They are a steppe tribe using masses of cavalry specializing particularly in deadly horse archers. Overall, they seem to be influenced by the ancient Parthians or Sassanids, with likely some Hunnic influence too. Originally a nomadic tribe, they took occupation of eastern frontier trading states, promptly settling down and becoming the Khuzaits. Overall, they have some pretty sweet looking armor and some killer horse archers. I never was really interested in the Calradic Empire in Warband, yet I hope to have a fresh go with this faction. The eastern and southern factions are often neglected, which is a shame as I think there's a lot to them that many miss out on. Lastly, we have the Aserai, the desert faction of the far south, pictured as yellow, making their living farming at the oases, springs, and the shores of the Great Southern Lake. The Aserai have a good piece of land on the southern border of the map, sharing borders with only 3 other factions, with these borders being mostly separated by water and mountains. From initially looking at it, I believe the Aserai will have one of the most easily defended lands due to the physical locations of the settlements and natural choke points. The Aserai are certainly the ancestors to the Sarranids on the basis of their similar cultures and the desert location. Specializing in horseback and on foot, they make use particularly of medium cavalry armed with spears. Historically, they are influenced by Sasanians, Berbers, and/or early Arabs, based on what we have seen so far in the music samples we have received. I love desert climates, but really did not like the way the Sarranid locations look like in Warband. With the recent screenshots we've seen of desert locations, I'm really looking forward to playing as them, if anything, to experience the gorgeous scenery. Well, that wraps up and covers all the major factions of Bannerlord. Yet, there's one more piece of information from Blog 7, stating, and I quote, "We do intend to give more flavor to the factions than existed in Warband. They are now divided into clans, who have their own priorities and rivalries. Lord's personalities have more variety. One new feature that we hope will add a lot of color is minor factions. Outlaws and mercenaries based on historical or legendary bands, like the Joms Vikings or the Fianna of Ireland. But the Outer Kingdoms, the one whom Imperial citizens would call barbarians, should still retain that sandbox feel." End quote. We have unfortunately received no more information on clans since this last blog post, which was close to 2.5 years ago. Yet, we can hope and pray that they are still working on this aspect of the game. They have been influenced by many of the Warband mods in their design, which I won't complain about, as Warband mods brought many much needed changes and features to the lacking Warband. I wonder if minor factions and clans would be able to revolt and take over a settlement or city and found their own faction. It would be awesome to have each game dynamically create more factions. However these clans and minor factions will work, I'm very excited for this feature. Hopefully more will be revealed in the coming months. And that concludes the Bannerlord faction analysis summary by yours truly, Timby. I had a lot of fun working on this video, learned bunches, and I hope you did as well. Let me know in the comments what you think about these new features and factions. What faction are you most looking forward to playing as in Bannerlord? I'm undecided after making this video. If you liked the video, let me know by leaving a like or comment. If you did not enjoy the video, please let me know how I can improve. If you don't do either, I hope every time you play a Mount & Blade game, your fives will be rated and bandits will drink from your skull. Check out my Twitter, Facebook, and Steam group found in the description, and check out my friend's channel, Roy the Bannerlord. Anyways, thank you so much. Live each day to its fullest, regret nothing. Have a great day, wherever you are, in the big massive world we call home.